The act of seeing is realized progressively. At the instance of seeing, light clusters called photons travel from the object to the eye and pass through the eye lens, where they are refracted and focus on the retina at the back of the eye. Here, rays are turned into electrical signals and then transmitted by neurons to the center of vision at the back of the brain. The act of seeing actually takes place in this center in the brain. All the images we view in our lives and all the events we experience are actually experienced in this tiny and dark place. Both the film you are now watching and the boundless landscape you see when you gaze at the horizon actually fit into this place of a few cubic centimeters. Now, let us reconsider this information more carefully. When we say we see, we actually see the effect the rays reaching our eyes form in our brain by being converted into electric signals. When we say we see, we actually observe the electrical signals in our brain. By the way, there is another point that has to be kept in mind. The brain is sealed to light, and its interior is absolutely dark. Therefore, it is never possible for the brain to contact with light itself. We can explain this interesting situation with an example. Let us suppose that in front of us there is a burning candle, and we view its light. During this period, when we view the candle's light, the inside of our skull and our brain are in absolute darkness. The light of the candle never illuminates our brain and our center of vision. However, we watch a colorful and bright world inside our dark brain. The same situation applies to all our other senses. Sound, touch, taste, and smell are all perceived in the brain as electrical signals. Therefore, our brains throughout our lives do not confront the original of the matter existing outside us, but rather an electrical copy of it formed inside our brain. It is at this point that we are misled by assuming these copies are instances of real matter outside us. These physical facts make us come to an indisputable conclusion. Everything we see, touch, hear, and perceive is matter. The world, or the universe, is only electrical signals in our brain. For instance, we see a bird in the external world. In reality, this bird is not in the external world, but in our brain. The light particles reflecting from the bird reach our eye, and there they are converted into electrical signals. These signals are transmitted by neurons to the center of vision in the brain. The bird we see is, in fact, the electric signals in our brain. If the sight nerves traveling to the brain were disconnected, the image of the bird would suddenly disappear. In the same manner, the bird sounds we hear are also in our brain. If the nerve traveling from the ear to the brain was disconnected, there would be no sound left. Put simply, the bird, the shape of which we see, and the sound of which we hear, is nothing but the brain's interpretation of electrical signals. Another point to be considered here is the sense of distance. For example, the distance between you and this screen is nothing but a feeling of space formed in your brain. Also, objects that seem to be very distant in one person's view are actually images clustered at one spot in the brain. For instance, someone who watches the stars in the sky assumes that they are millions of light years away from him. Yet the stars are right inside himself and the center of vision of his brain. While you watch this film, you are in truth not inside the room you assume yourself to be in. On the contrary, the room is inside you. Your seeing your body makes you think that you are inside of it. However, you must remember that your body too is an image formed inside your brain. So far, we have been speaking repeatedly of an external world and a world of perceptions formed in our brain, the latter of which is what we see. However, since we can never actually reach the external world, how can we be sure that such a world really exists? Definitely we cannot. The only reality we cope with is the world of perceptions we live within our minds.
Stage and his sort of point of view that people can be tricked into thinking that they're seeing something that they're not actually. Tell me what your reactions are to that and how your own philosophies on this whole thing differ or align.
So I think they're a beautiful set of demos, Bo, and we tend to think of illusions as exploiting tricks in the visual system, right? So an illusion is somehow revealing a quirk in how we see that if we could somehow fix it, things would be better and we'd see the world more accurately as it is. And I think maybe you were making this point, but what all the sorts of things you were demonstrating to me show is not that these are quirks in the visual system. This is how all of our perception is all the time. And it's this kind of flip where it's intuitive to think that perception is some kind of readout of an external reality, that with the eyes are windows out onto the world, and we read it out and sometimes we make mistakes. But really, perception is not coming from the outside in, it's coming from the inside out, always and all the time. It's this kind of neuronal fantasy that is tied in some way to whatever is out there, and it's the process of understanding how that relationship works. That's perception, and perception is not about representing the world as it is.
So you believe that there is an independent reality, but it is influenced by what you yourself are processing with your own senses and your own experience?
Yeah, I think there probably is something. If I jump in front of a bus, it's not going to go well, regardless of whether I'm looking at it or not, or what it looks like. It's there, and but the way we experience things, from colors to shapes to maybe even the structure of space and time, the way in which our perceptions are formed, those, however real they seem, aren't a kind of just an opening out of the brain to the world. We impose this structure on, sensory data doesn't have color. It's electromagnetic radiation is color. All our sensory inputs are colorless, shapeless, smellless, odorless. We construct not only the specific contents of what we perceive, but the modalities themselves, the structure, the whole shape and organization of our perception comes more from within than from without.
Is this not slavery? Somebody can decide whether you're happy or unhappy. Is this not slavery? Somebody can decide whether you will be a pleasant human being or an unpleasant human being. Is this not slavery? What happens within you, somebody else determines. This is the worst form of slavery, isn't it? Isn't it so? It is just that because everybody is like that, it seems to be normal. It is not. Can you see me right now, all of you? Can you see me? Just point out where I am. Use your hands and point out. Can you see me? Oh, you got it wrong. Now, this light is falling upon me, reflecting, going through your lenses, inverted image in your retina. You know the whole story, right? Where do you see me right now? Within yourself. Where do you hear me right now? Within yourself. Where have you seen the whole world? Within yourself. Have you ever experienced anything outside of yourself? Everything that ever happened to you, darkness and light happened within you, pain and pleasure happened within you, joy and misery happened within you. Have you ever experienced anything outside of yourself? No. So what I am asking you is, what happens within you? Who should determine how it should happen? Somebody else? Definitely you should determine what should happen within this, isn't it? So if you determine what's happening within this, your whole experience of life will be determined by you, nobody else but you, isn't it? The events around you may not be determined by you, but how your experience of life is on this planet is 100% determined by you.